Hey everyone, what's going on? On May 10th this year, we got a story of Kim Jong-Un and Donald Trump who are setting up a meeting date on June 12th. And if you've been following this channel and other Gematria channels, you would understand why 6/12 is a significant date for this to happen on. If you're new to this channel, check out some of the links in the description, but our mainstream media is coded with what is called gematria every single day. It is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, and it stems back to Jewish mysticism, which is called Kabbalah, which is the belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number, and also other ancient knowledge such as Hermeticism. And if you understand this knowledge and you just watch these links in the description and learn how to practice it for yourself, you will understand that there are people who are manipulating this world that we live in, and they understand this ancient knowledge and they're using it to rule over us. And after doing that, you'll understand why 6/12 is such a significant date. The, one of the biggest stories this year was the Stoneman Douglas high school shooting, and that happened on Valentine's Day. And in Gematria, the word Valentine equals 612. And it just so happened to happen exactly 612 days after the Pulse nightclub shooting that happened on 6/12 in 2016. Think about Pulse and think about Heart, right? Think about Valentine's, right? 612. Also, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, the lady who the school is named after, she was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that's the 612 area code. That's just where we had the Super Bowl, right? Where the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and then it was the Stoneman Douglas Eagles. But the 612 area code, also Columbine High School equals 612. It's a super important number to these school shootings, 612. And I made a big long video about how it's all connected back to the 49th anniversary of the moon landing this year. Lots of stuff in regards to the moon. I even just recently made a video about all of the Hawaii stuff and how it's connected back to the moon and connected to North Korea. We had that Hawaii missile scare of North Korea 111 days before the Hawaiian earthquake. The word Hawaii in Gematria equals 111. The Valentine's Day massacre was really synced up to the Chicago Cubs as well. The Chicago Cubs won the World Series 67 weeks exactly before the Stoneman Douglas shooting. And if you recall, Anthony Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs even went to high school there, and his birthday was 6 months and 7 days before Valentine's Day. And Valentine's in Gematria equals 67. The shooter was Nicholas Cruz. His name equals 67. He was 19 years old. The 19th prime is 67. He was born the same year Marjorie Stoneman Douglas died, exactly 19 weeks after she died. And she died at the age of 108 on the date of 14/5, right? And in Gematria, Chicago, Illinois equals 145, a lot like the date that she died. And she died at the age of 108. Remember, the Cubs hadn't won the World Series in 108 seasons and much, much more. It was the Cubs even won the World Series in their 145th season, so it was all synced up to the Chicago Cubs, but also the moon. The moon is supposedly 108 moons away from the Earth, and the sun is also supposedly 108 suns, or 108 Earths away from the sun. And 108 Earths make up the sun. That's how the size of the sun. 108 is important to what I'm talking about. Gematria is geometry within language, and in this thing here, the word geometry equals 108. Notice geometry 108 frontwards and 108 also in reverse. The guy who invented gematria or geometry, his name is Euclid. Euclid equals 108. And also, full moon in gematria equals 108 in reverse, 108 in the forward method, and I'll leave a link in the description to my video about the Hawaii stuff. Remember the great American eclipse that we had this year that happened on the anniversary of Hawaii being a state, and it synced up to North Korea and South Korea. Moon Jae-in, their president, Moon, his name is literally Moon. It's all about the number 156, which I'll talk about here in a second. But if you go 612 days before 612 of this year, it just so happens to be 10-8, a lot like 108 of the year 2016, the year the Cubs won the World Series. You know, the Willis Tower in Chicago is 108 stories tall. The Great Chicago Fire began on 10/8, 145 years before the Cubs won. Pretty sure if you write out 145, it even equals 108. There's 108 double stitches on a baseball. It was all synced up to the Cubs, and that's why they won after 108 years of not winning, right? But just think about it. 108, 10-8 is 612 days before 612. Once again, super significant to what I have been talking about. Just lots of these things that are synced up to the moon. What I mentioned in the previous video about North Korea and the moon was that if you go from Kim Jong-un's birthday to June 12th, it's 156 days, and the last time that there was an eclipse that went over the whole United States, like the Great American Eclipse of this year, or of 2017, that happened in the year 1918, and it happened 156 days before World War I came to an end. And, you know, think about it. Hawaii's anniversary being on the anniversary, or on the Great American Eclipse Day. And the last time there was a total solar eclipse seen in the United States was in 1991. And it was only seen in the state of Hawaii. And if you write out World War III, it equals 156. And Moon Jae-in of South Korea, he was born 156 days after the Great American Eclipse. And Dennis Rodman went to North Korea last year 156 days after Kim Jong-un's birthday, and he played 911 NBA games. 911 is the 156 prime number. The last time there was a big earthquake in Hawaii, the last biggest earthquake in Hawaii, the anniversary of it was 156 days before the one that happened on May 4th this year. So a super important number, 156. 156 is really important to 9/11. Like I said, the 156 prime is 911. The company who built the World Trade Centers, Magnuson Klemenkic Associates equals 156 in gematria, and the 911 was made the emergency dialing code in the year 68, which was 33 years before 9/11. And if you write out 33, it equals 156. And just think about this in regards to Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump's. They announced their meeting 33 days before 6/12. And then on May 15th, they come out in the media saying that the meeting might not happen 5 days later, which is 28 days before 6/12. And the World Trade Centers were open 28 years before they were supposedly attacked, right? So the construction began 33 years, and then they were open 28 years. So think about that. Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, they say they're going to have a meeting 33 days before 6/12, and then on 28 days before, they come out and say they might not have a meeting. But if you write out 28, it also equals 156. 33, 156, 28, 156. The word false flag equals 156. Al-Qaeda terrorist attack equals 911 in Jewish gematria. You know, the real people who are responsible for 9/11. You know, it all sinks back to Israel. Israel created out of World War. Tisha B'Av is a Jewish festival or holiday that equals 911. It's about the destruction of the two temples. Think about that in regards to 9/11, right? And then it equals 911 in Gematria. There's just so much. There's lots of 9/11 symbolism going on. Lots of all these plane stories. Think about it. Southwest, right? Think about Hawaii in regards to Southwest, the airline. Also, in regards to 156, a cipher that I never talk about, but just interesting that they're meeting in Singapore, and Singapore equals 156 in KFW Kabbalah. So I've never talked about it before, but I just documented it because I noticed that equals 156, a number that's important to North Korea and all of this moon symbolism. And I've made a bunch of videos about how the moon is synced up to earthquakes, and I've been talking about earthquake and bridge symbolism all year, and we even got that bridge collapse in the Miami area, and then we had the Hawaii earthquake, a big earthquake in Hawaii. But in Revelation 6:12, it talks about a great earthquake. So, just how interesting. And it also talks about, in that same area, it talks about how the moon turns blood red and whatnot. Just interesting in regards to the blood moons of a few years ago, and also, the Great American Eclipse. So, and June 12th is the 163rd day of the year. The word earthquake equals 163. So just something to think about, something interesting. Also, in regards to 9/11, this is the 241st anniversary of the United States, and Osama bin Laden in reverse equals 241. 241 is the 53rd prime number. North Korea equals 53. The Korean War ended in the year 53. Moon Jae-in's birthday, 24/1. He was born in the year 53. So just think about that. Osama bin Laden, 241, 241st year of the United States. Synced up to North Korea even. Even, in regards to, there's been lots of 48. Lots and lots of 48 stuff. Kim Jong-Un equals 48. Donald Trump equals 48. Wall equals 48. The Mexican-American War came to an end in the year 48. 1848. Think about that in regards to the Donald Trump building the wall. And remember, when Donald Trump won the election, he won the election just before the closest supermoon since the year 1948. Just days before the closest supermoon since the year 48. And that same day, we got a big earthquake in, I believe, Australia or somewhere in that area. I can't remember the exact location. Somewhere in that area, we got a major earthquake on the same day as the closest supermoon. Supermoon equals 107, just like earthquake, But Trump won the election. It was the biggest election upset since the year 1948 when Harry S. Truman defeated Thomas E. Dewey. Think about Truman in regards to the Korean War. The Cleveland Indians hadn't won the World Series since the year 48. They just lost in the World Series. Cleveland equals 48 in Gematria. And Israel also declared its independence in the year 1948. Just think about Israel, think about World War. Israel, supposedly the Jews even identify with the moon because the moon goes away and then it always ends up coming back. So there's lots of interesting stuff. This number 48, the word southwest even equals 48, once again with the plane stories. Also in regards to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas dying on 14/5, a lot like 145, and Chicago, Illinois equals 145, like I said. 2016 was 145 years after the Great Chicago Fire. But anyway, Israel declared its independence in 48, and it was by a guy named David Ben-Gurion that equals 145. And it was on the date of 14/5, right? The same day Marjorie Stoneman Douglas died. North Korea equals 145. And also the word Catholic equals 145. And North Korea and the Catholic Church and the Jesuits have a huge connection. They're all synced up. That's why the Korean War was 3 years, 1 month, and 2 days, because the word Pope equals 312. Jorge Mario Bergoglio equals 312, Pope Francis's real name. Much, much more. If you go from the Great American Eclipse Day to June 12th, it's a span with the end date, so 9 months, 23 days, and that's the big date that was important to Pope Francis. It's the day Donald Trump called out the kneeling during the national anthem. And I pointed out how all of this goes back to the Eagles winning the Super Bowl as well, and Pope Francis finished his trip to the United States in Philadelphia on the Jesuit anniversary. He's the first Jesuit Pope. You know, his birth, he turned 81 days after the Jesuit anniversary this year. So, but Eagle equals 205, Philadelphia 205, Israel equals 205. Talked about how the death of my grandma and my uncle were synced up to all of this, and they died 205 days apart. My grandma died on Eagle Street. My uncle who died, his son is the only Eagles fan I've ever met in my entire life. I pointed out a whole bunch of other stuff here that's off topic a little bit, but Pope Benedict, who Pope Francis replaced, he was the first pope to resign since the 205th pope. So, you know, this 205 number is really important. LeBron James's full name equals 205, and is just LeBron James equals 923, and 923 this year is 923 years after the first crusade began, and if you add out 923, it equals 205. But moving on. So, in regards to Israel, it's interesting, and just think about, you know, Donald Trump pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal as well, and then Israel bombing Syria, Israel pretty much pulling all the strings in the world, right? And created out of World War. And Benjamin Netanyahu, this is why it's important. Benjamin Netanyahu equals 69, and he'll be 69 years old this year. And if you write out World War III, it equals 69. And this year, things are always synced up to sports. And this year, the World Series begins on the day that leaves 69 days in the year. And it's also the 114th World Series. And the phrase World War equals 114. Just like Pearl Harbor equals 114. Think about Hawaii being big in the news. Holocaust equals 114 in gematria. When the Cubs won the World Series, it was their 114th season being called the Cubs. And when they won Game 7 of the World Series, they got their 114th win of the season. And I talked about how it was synced up to a tie that they had, the first tie since the year 2005, when the Astros tied the White Sox, or tied the Reds 114 days before they played the White Sox in the World Series. The word tie equals 114. My uncle died on January 14th. He's a big Cubs fan, synced up. My neighbor was synced up to the Cubs, and my neighbor died. All of these odd things, and the number 114 was really important. So that's why, another reason why I bring the Cubs back into this. I don't know if the Cubs are going to be in the World Series this year, but the Cubs play a big role in a lot of the coding that is going on. And so anyway, you know, Netanyahu equals 69. He's going to be 69 years old this year. World War III equals 69. The World Series begins on the day that leaves 69 days in the year. The word eclipse equals 69. The Hawaii earthquake was a 6.9. The moon landing happened in the year 69 in the sign of Cancer that looks like a 69. The symbol looks a lot like a 69. Remember, David Bowie died at the age of 69. He died of cancer. David Bowie, even important to the Valentine's Day shooting, he had the song called Valentine's Day where he mocked the, you know, gun stuff. A lot more to it. Marilyn Manson, his biggest influence was David Bowie. Marilyn Manson had all kinds of stuff in regards to Columbine. Just, I'll leave some links in the description. There's a lot going on with Marilyn Manson and how he's connected. But the David Bowie stuff, we had the Falcon Heavy launch that was a tribute to David Bowie this year, right? So all about the moon. If I could find that video, I'll leave a link in the description. But Saturn equals 69. Saturn is really important to what I'm talking about as well. The Jews worship Saturn. Everything about Israel is about Saturn. It's all synced up to Saturn. Pi equals 69. Think about geometry that I've been talking about earlier in the video. Pi equals 69. False flag equals 69. 6-9 leaves 205 days in the year as well. So, just interesting. I'll leave a link to this video as well, but I have a video about the number 624 that I just made. If you write out 669, it equals 624. Just like Singapore, where they're supposedly meeting, and just like Jerusalem, right? And think about it. Trump finally saying that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. I also find it interesting that they're meeting in Singapore and by Malaysia. It used to be part of Malaysia. And in 2017, on the date of May 10th, or 2017, we got the death of Kim Jong-Un's brother, right? And he got murdered by North Korea in Malaysia. And it just sticks out because his birth date was May 10th, the same day that they announced that Kim Jong-Un and Donald Trump are going to be meeting on June 12th. So that's his birthday. The word Korea equals 510. Moon Jae-in, the South Korean president, became the president on May 10th. A big important day. This guy's died at age 45 on the 44th day of the year. And think about that in regards to Donald Trump. The 44th person to be the president, but he's the 45th president. How interesting. And, of course, this guy, just like everybody else, he dies by the numbers. His name equals 44, just like Earthquake, but he died on the 44th day of the year. His name in reverse equals 55. North Korea equals 55. His name equals 163, which is interesting, because June 12th is the 163rd day of the year, remember? Just like the word earthquake. And I just documented again about the Malaysian airline and how that was important, the missing Malaysian airline. And then the very next day, we got a story about the missing Malaysian airline that somehow it has been synced up to Donald Trump for the longest time. And it just makes me wonder if there's going to be a plane wreck or his plane's going to go missing. Because in the movie Castaway, Tom Hanks' plane goes missing over Malaysia. And it's called the FedEx 88. And in gematria, Trump equals 88. And 88 was just this humongous number that is important to Donald Trump with the kneeling during the national anthem and whatnot, and the Super Bowl, and him calling out the kneelers in the NFL on 9/23, or also 23/9. Pope Francis came to the United States in the 239th year of the United States. That's the 52nd prime. We just had Super Bowl 52, and that missing Malaysian airline had 239 passengers, and it was on the day that leaves 9 months and 23 days in the year. So, who knows? I'm just trying to piece the puzzle together. They're giving us this date for a specific reason, and it's all because it's synced up to the moon, and it's synced up to the Valentine's Day shooting. So, I don't know. Just wanted to make this video quick. I'm going to leave some links in the description. Check out them links as well. There's just so much information to re-talk about that otherwise, all these videos would be 4 hours long every single time. They're already too long. But have a good one. Well, hold on. I want to look really quick. I feel like there was something else I was going to talk about. No, I'll just make a separate video on that. So have a good one. Peace.